Thank you for the meditation, Joyce. And as always, my beloved sister in spirit and all that good stuff, Reverend Mary Ann, thank you for the invite. I think the last time I was actually with you all in person, it was around March 2019. Oh my, how time flies. Looking forward to that time when, I'll be back in town, back home, and we can get together in person. So, today, we're talking about this idea of vision. In case you do not know, I did the daily guides in the Science of Mind magazine for June, and we'll be talking about this idea of holy boldness. So I'm bringing a little bit of June into the end of May as we talk about this idea of vision from a bold space. The vision for Centers for Spiritual Living Greater Baltimore, wow. The vision for CSL as a whole is a world that works for all. However, if we're going to create a world that works for all, it requires more than just having that as a vision. It also requires us to have a clear and present idea of what is this vision. For example, if someone were to walk up to you today, someone downtown Pittsburgh, right around the corner from, Point State Park, and said, I have a question for you. If you can answer this question, I will give you $100,000. What is a world that works for all? Can we explain what a world that works for all is, what it means, without saying what it's not? In other words, can we say a world that works for all, well, it's a world that has no war. No. You're mentioning what we don't want. Well, it's a world without racism. No. You're mentioning what we don't want. Just go straight at what does a world that works for all, what does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What does it feel like to the very cells of your body? Because if we're going to create this as a lived experience, in other words, rather than just have it as a vision, Reverend Mary Ann, I am envisioning the two of us going to Primanti Brothers and having a sandwich that neither of us can eat all in one sitting. I'm visioning it. I'm visioning us going to, the University of Pittsburgh and going around all of we can envision it, but until we actually put action to it. Frederick Douglass said, I prayed for freedom from slavery. I prayed for freedom for 25 years, but I did not get it until I prayed with my feet. We know from the Judeo-Christian Bible, faith without works is dead. So if we are going to manifest this vision, then we must rethink, reinvent, reimagine all of the ways that we interact and engage in relationship with all that God is. Pause, breathe, let that settle. Because what I am talking about is a completely radical, for lack of a better word, audacious way of entering into relationships. There's a gentleman by the name of Daryl Davis, jazz musician, who is living this because he speaks to Klan members. As a Black man, he has meetings with Klan members. Now let that sink in. His goal being to engage in conversation to such a degree that this person, Klansman, now recognizes, I don't know this man. Why have I hated him? I don't know this man. And through the conversation, through this development of relationship, Daryl Davis, Black man, convinces Klansman, white man, to give up being a member of the Klan. And he surrenders his robes to Daryl Davis as a sign of their now developing brotherhood, relationship, and dare I say, family connection. If we are going to create a world that works for all, Then it means having courageous conversations, difficult conversations with those people that we don't like. And sometimes that is us. There are parts of us that we often deny and suppress and ignore. If we are not engaging in self-care to the degree that we could, then we are ignoring our own needs. We are ignoring our own divinity. We're not loving ourselves to the degree that we could. There is only one mind, and that mind is God, and that mind is infinite wisdom, infinite creativity, infinite allness itself. And that mind is your mind right now. Therefore, if that mind, the mind that is God, is love itself, then we are invited to demonstrate that love in our relationships, starting with our relationship with self. If a reality television show were to follow you around for 48 hours, how many pieces of evidence would they see? Would they document that you love yourself? See, it's one thing that I could say, like I could ask Kathy, do you love somebody? Kathy's going to say yes. And I say, give me at least 5 people. Kathy's going to give me boom, 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 boom. Now I could say, I hear you. What does your love look like when you express it? Because a lot of people say, I love you. Domestic violence. Very often, the abuser will tell the abused, I love you until you annoy me. And then there's a fist, an elbow, or some other form of violence. That's not love. Saying it doesn't mean it. Being it. Because when we are being the embodiment of love, the doing happens naturally. Someone who is being an artist. There's a famous, now I can't think of his name, Miles Davis, famous musician. Miles Davis was once asked about this idea of expressing music. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, I can't help but to express music. I hear it all the time. Wait, and the interviewer said, you hear it? I'm hearing it now. Because he is the embodiment of what it means to be music. Are we living, moving, and having our beingness as the embodiment of love? If so, then that is going to change how we treat ourselves. That's going to change how we treat each other. That's going to change how we treat the planet Earth itself. Because there is only one life, and that life is God, and that life is all that is. As Voltaire said, circle, circumference nowhere, center everywhere, everywhere. God is. God is. So if we're going to have prophetic vision, if we are going to reimagine, rethink, reinvent, then we are invited to get to the nuts and bolts of, well, then what does it mean? Our global heart vision for Centers for Spiritual Living. What does each piece of that puzzle mean? When we say we envision all people, all beings, and all life as expressions of God. We envision, but are we embodying it in order to express that? Because for me, yes, envision, necessary piece of the puzzle. But then when we put action, treat, and move your body, move your hands, move your feet, move all that you are in order to make that which you have envisioned a reality. So for me, the remix of that is we create communities where all people, all beings, and all life are treated, honored, and celebrated as expressions of God. Because now the question comes, well, what is it? What am I required to do? What is mine to do to create that? Now, Joyce and I can get in conversation and say, well, I don't know why Reverend Marianne, wants to do this. Like, she wants me and you to talk about the action plan, like craft the blueprint so that we can bring this to the community. And then, okay, so how do we create this? See, just envisioning it is just, there it is, there it is, there it is. Wow. Irene wants to know, can I get in on that? Well, no, I'm envisioning. I'm envisioning. If we are going to create a world that works for all, then we have to move it to the next stage of simply getting a cookbook and reading. You know, I love Julia Child, so I'm gonna let's read one of her. Let's see, Julia Child recipe. Oh, this is good. This is a good one. She says, get 2 eggs. Ooh, I like that part. A cup of flour. Ooh, there you go. There you go. Like, we can go through the whole recipe book, but if we never go to the grocery store to get the ingredients, and we don't follow the recipe, putting the flour, putting the eggs, putting the butter, stirring and mixing and baking, then none of us are going to be able to sit down and eat the meal.
Right.
Keeping it just in the realm of visioning,
Right.
keeping it in the realm of just imagination is like reading a cookbook expecting to be fed. It's not going to work. The second statement in our Global Heart Vision, we see a world in which each and every person lives in alignment with their highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. We see it. We see, Irene, do you look over there? Look over there. Do you see the cabbages in the produce section? Irene says, yes, I see them. To which Irene then says, Reverend Ray, are you going to go get one so we can cook it and have dinner tonight? Oh, that's right. We can't just see it. At some point, we have to go attain it, be it, prepare it. So I remix. We provide and engage in practices in which each and every person is provided the means to live in alignment with their highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. And this calls us individually and collectively to embody a higher state of consciousness, which results in measurable action. Results in measurable action. How are we ensuring that we are living that, being that? So in other words, if I were to ask, referencing vision, not just what do you see, but how do you see? And based upon what you see, what are you then invited to do? If you're familiar with the Matrix, the idea of being for Neo, the Keanu Reeves character, the idea, or Mr. Anderson, that was his name, the idea of being able to see the Matrix. But not only was he able to see it, he was able to operate within it in a very different way in order to change the Matrix itself. Which we can say, well, wait a minute, time out. Because he was able to see the Matrix. Okay, table that for a second. Referencing science, just straight old, good old-fashioned science. In the spectrum of light, there is a tiny sliver of what these things called eyeballs are able to see. But there's a lot of other stuff going on. Radio waves, we can't see those. Infrared, we can't see those. Ultraviolet, we can't see those. X-rays, can't see those. Gamma rays, can't see those. And yet, they are still there. So I say, well, rather than just focusing on what we can see, we're invited and encouraged to learn and to practice methods of perceiving, seeing, that are beyond our eyesight. In other words, develop and use insight and foresight and ultimately God's sight. And when I say God's sight, I am referencing when Ernest Holmes invited us to not pray to God, but pray as God. To embody the divine to such a degree that I know when I am speaking, it's not just Ray, wretched sinner, where is me? No, it's beyond. It is that which God is, I must be. Therefore, these words are the words of the universe. As Carl Sagan said, you are the way that the universe knows itself. And if you are the way that the universe knows itself, then when you speak, it's the universe speaking, not just through you. We're not channeling the universe. We are it. God isn't just in us, because then that implies, hold on, there it is. I took it out. Now there's God, which I took outside of me, brought it outside of me, and then there's me. But I feel empty, so I'm going to put God back in. It's not like a hot dog in a hot dog bun. God is the hot dog, the bun, the ketchup, the mustard, the relish, the chili, the fries that go on the side. God is all of it. The plate that holds the food, the napkin that wipes your fingers and your face. God is all of it. So it's not just in us. And if God is all there is, and there's only one mind, and that mind is my mind now, then my thoughts are God's thoughts. My words have to be God's words. So I'm invited to have a greater vision. How does the universe perceive life? How does love perceive itself? How does joy, since we brought that word in, how does joy, joyfully, joyful, joyful, I am the divine, and I express it in every way. How does joy show up in, through, and as us? Dr. Holmes invites us and says, what the world needs is spiritual conviction. Ooh, hold on. Hey, wait a minute. What the world needs, I gotta say, what the world needs now. The world has love. It needs this spiritual conviction that he's talking about so that we are embodying it and expressing it. So what the world needs is spiritual conviction, followed by spiritual experience. And Dr. Holmes says, I would rather see a student of this science of mind and spirit, prove its principle. I would rather that than have them repeat all of the words of all of the wisdom that have ever or could ever be uttered. In other words, Dr. Holmes is saying, I don't care how great you can enunciate and speak the words of a treatment, and I don't care if you can do that as magnificently and as beautifully as possible. I don't care. What I care more is, are you embodying those words and allowing those words to show up in, through, and as you to such a degree that it is now changing the planet? Why did he say, Sermon by the Sea, show me 1,000 people who know what science of mind and spirit is, or religious science. They know how to use it and live it as a way of life. And I will see, in essence, a world that works for all. We are invited into a completely new degree of conviction. Imagine, here's a plane flying through the air, and you're sitting there waiting to jump. And you stick one foot out, you put one foot in, you stick one foot out, and you shake it all about. I'm not ready to jump yet. But the moment you leap, I don't care how fast you flap, I don't care how fast you backstroke or whatever it is, you are not getting back in the plane. Once you leap and say love is all there is, leap. Joy, leap. Peace, joy, harmony, passion, all that God is, leap. And I mean leap. Everything changes. It has no choice but to change. Dr. Holmes says, there is an irresistible potential pressing against everyone to be expressed. And when we leap, when the caterpillar leaps and creates the cocoon, there is no going back. Once it has liquefied, there is no going back. Once it starts to stretch and break open the chrysalis, there is no going back. Once we have made the choice to say, I see it, I see who and what not just what's possible for me to be, but I am moving into what is probable for me to be and do and have. And wait a minute, I'm going to fully go to now it is inevitable. What do I want to experience? I want to experience a world where there is peace, where my great-grandchildren, where my grandchildren go back and read the history book to say, did you know that in the year 2024 there was such a thing as war? It's extinct. There was such a thing as hunger. It's extinct. The unhoused, extinct, unless someone chooses. Extinct. Poverty, extinct. What is mine to do to live into that? Because the moment I have it in my mind, it is already in the one mind. And whatever it is I have in my mind, the law is already operating accordingly. So how do we bring vision to fruition? Dr. Holmes said, whatever is true about God is true about you. Breathe that in. Whatever is true about God is true about you. To which Emerson reminds us to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else, someone else. To be yourself, to be your true, authentic, and divine and magnificent self is truly the greatest accomplishment that there could ever be. So I invite us, as I close, I invite us into that space of who and what do I see myself as? Now that I know that which God is, I am. My mind, God's mind. My words, God's words. My feeling, the way that the universe feels. The way I serve others, the way I help is how spirit helps itself as it is individualizing as them. As spirit is individualizing as them. When I step into being a 21st century new thought, good Samaritan, it is God being kind to God, God having conversation with God, God supporting God, because God is all there is. And when we have that vision and move into it, that love is all there is, then when love, as two and more of us are gathered, touch and agree, then that love is contagious, that love is magnetic, and that love changes the world. And that requires a bold and holy vision of action.